Super Bowl 57 preview. I'm doing this early. I haven't listened to very many experts talk about this matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the second Super Bowl that will be played in Arizona, and Arizona is my favorite choice for a Super Bowl. And there's some reasons for that. Is one, you know you're going to have great weather, so you can open up the roof, and then you're playing on the grass surface. And then on top of that, the first half of the game is played in daylight. I don't think you can beat that. I love Super Bowls in Florida, but when you can be outdoors in warm weather and on grass, and the first half of the game's played in daylight, you got my approval. And if you asked me if it could be there every year, I'd say play it there every year. And I know what will be said, well, it's not a great party city. Who cares? It's the Super Bowl. It's about the quality of the game and having the most important game played in the best environment, where you don't have to worry about weather, where you don't have to worry about turf injuring players. It's ultimately about what happens on the field. And that Patriots-Seahawks game wasn't that fantastic. It certainly was. I loved it. And I was watching that game and saying, I think this is about as good as it gets. Unless you're playing maybe in San Diego or Los Angeles. But for a stadium that you could actually go either way, play indoor, outdoor, and in this case you can open it up and you don't have to worry about any chance of rain, right on. So let's get into the matchup. So let's start with the Chiefs first, because the Chiefs are now in their third Super Bowl. And we're talking about Patrick Mahomes, and we're talking about Andy Reid. Patrick Mahomes is now in Super Bowl number 3. And he's looking for that second Super Bowl. The second Super Bowl is what separates good Hall of Fame quarterbacks from the greatest, because so many get that one Super Bowl, and that's, again, the ultimate prize. But what makes you truly the best of the best is multiple Super Bowls. And I think of Brett Favre, who's only able to get one. Steve Young was only able to get one. Even Aaron Rodgers was only able to get one. But if you're really in the conversation of greatest of all time, and for me, I'd say, well, that conversation, it's not even a conversation because Tom Brady's so far ahead of everyone else. But let's just say you're in that top tier of 3 or 4 guys. You need multiple Super Bowls. I'd say with the exception of maybe a Johnny Unitas, because it was different. He was at the end of his prime when Super Bowls began. So it's a big game for Patrick Mahomes, and he hasn't played well in Super Bowls. He has the Super Bowl MVP against the 49ers. He had one good quarter. That's it. Not even a good full quarter. He didn't have a great game. He threw multiple picks. Then you have the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers, and that was... they didn't even get in the end zone. And he made some incredible plays to try and get them down the field and score and do only what Patrick Mahomes could do. But let's face it, he didn't have a good game. It's, the thing about Mahomes, and he has my highest respect as a player, he doesn't get criticized at all. He got a pass for that game. He had a bad game, a bad Super Bowl. Somehow he gets a pass. What happens if Mahomes loses the Super Bowl? He's now 1-2 in Super Bowls. And again, I make the argument he should have lost that Super Bowl, the first one against the 49ers. He should be 0-2. What happens? And I'm tired. I don't want to hear any more Tom Brady comparisons. But how do we view Patrick Mahomes if he's now 1-2 in the Super Bowl? If he wins this, then indeed he is now up there, even though he's young, as being, can we start talking about top 10 quarterback of all time? Some people have already put him in there. I haven't. Then let's talk about Andy Reid. I respect Andy Reid. I appreciate Andy Reid and his long career, and now this is Super Bowl number 4 for Andy Reid. Getting all the way through to the Super Bowl in both conferences is a great accomplishment. But I do feel Andy Reid and the way we view him, I don't look at it like other people. Yes, he got the Super Bowl win with the Chiefs in 19 against the 49ers. But he didn't coach particularly great in that game. And he had a terrible game against the Buccaneers. Terrible coach game. Completely outcoached. And the decisions he made in that game were very poor. Before halftime, if you ask me, well, what's the difference? What put Andy Reid over the top? Patrick Mahomes. I put far more credit to Patrick Mahomes than Andy Reid. Is he going to the Hall of Fame? Yes. Is he worthy of going to the Hall of Fame? Yes. But this is also a big game for Andy Reid. And then you turn over to the Eagles and say, well, what does it mean for their players? And what does it mean for their franchise? Well, I should say, what does it mean for the Chiefs? Well, they're going for their 3rd Super Bowl win. And you're one of the more successful franchises, and you put yourself up there among the great NFL franchises of all time. You got the Patriots with 6, you got the Steelers with 6, the 49ers and Cowboys with 5, the Giants, Packers with 4, and then you have teams like the Raiders and the Redskins who have 3. If I'm getting all that right off the top of my mind, I'm not looking at any notes or anything, but the Chiefs, this is the best era of Chiefs football here with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So that's what the Chiefs can do if they win. They get their 3rd Super Bowl. And you can start talking about a dynasty. I believe you need 3 Super Bowl championships to be considered a dynasty. Whether that's in the Super Bowl era, the Steelers of the 70s, the 49ers of the 80s, the Cowboys of the 90s, or you could go with either Patriots dynasty. The Eagles got their first Super Bowl in 17 through a long wait, and they've had many great players in their franchise history. They had many good teams, and they're back again. This is their 4th Super Bowl, and they're going for their 2nd championship. Again, completely different team with the exception of just a couple players. And they have their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who's among the most improved players in the whole league. I think Nick Sirianni's done a fine job of turning this team around and getting them to the Super Bowl as fast as he's done. It's not really, I feel, a legacy game for anyone like it is for the Chiefs on the Eagles side. Of course, if Hurts has a big game and a good game, we could eventually down the road say, well, here's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, it's amazing. If he's able to get this done, he'll be able to do something Donovan McNabb was never able to do. We know Donovan McNabb had a lousy Super Bowl against the Patriots. But Donovan McNabb had a great career, and I do respect McNabb and what he was able to accomplish, even though he fell short of the ultimate prize. Now let's look at the game. And I'm going to say it right here up front. The Eagles, without doubt, they are the better team on paper. And sure, when we talk about on paper, it doesn't always play out like it's going to be on paper. But I think there's a huge advantage for the Eagles. Coaching, yeah, I don't see either one having an edge over the other. If you say quarterbacks, yeah, I'm taking Mahomes over Hurts. Though Hurts had an MVP caliber season. Running backs, I'm going Eagles. Receivers and tight ends, I'm going Eagles. Offensive line, Eagles. Defensive line, Eagles. Linebackers, I'd say Chiefs. Secondary, Eagles. So you're saying they have the advantage everywhere except for two units. Or it's the quarterback and then the linebackers, really, that I'm giving the advantage to the Chiefs. Everywhere else, it's the Eagles. And how do you beat the Chiefs? You know, when the Eagles are looking at this, how do you beat an all-time great quarterback? You beat him with a 4-man front. In this case, it's a 5-man front with the Eagles, but I think they can get pressure with the four pass rushers. That's how you always beat Tom Brady. That's how the Bucs were able to do it against Mahomes. That's how the 49ers were having success until they blew it at the end. You get there with 4 and you pick your blitzes carefully. The Eagles are going to be able to get to Mahomes. And I think their secondary is good enough. And they don't have to worry about Tyreek Hill. You can let Travis Kelce get his yards. Fine. He can have a good game. He can have a big game. You just can't allow anyone else to. You have to try to minimize those little trick plays and the pitches and the improv by Mahomes. But for the Eagles, they want to get off to the early lead, score first, and they're not going to run into the problem the 49ers did in 19 with Jimmy Garoppolo missing wide open receivers, not seeing them, and then Kyle Shanahan overthinking and being a head case. Get pressure up front, win up front, and I think that's where this game's going to be won. They have a clear advantage with their offensive line against the Chiefs' defensive line, and a clear advantage between their defensive line and the Eagles' defensive line against the Chiefs' offensive line. Again, you can't underestimate Patrick Mahomes, but if you don't have to worry about the big, explosive play, that one play that is just going to kill you, like when they had Tyreek Hill, it makes everything so much easier. And I do see that Eagles team in some ways similar to that 49ers 19 team, except they have a better quarterback. They have more weapons on offense. They can bring the pressure on defense. And then this Chiefs team is an inferior team to both of the other teams. They don't scare you. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, yeah, he does scare you, but they don't scare you in the way that they did before, where you're looking at, 50-yard play. Hill's going to go the distance all the way on this, 70, 75-yard touchdown. It's not happening anymore. And the Chiefs don't blow people out. They don't score in bunches and score fast like they used to. The Eagles are the team that does that more. And when the Eagles have the ball, I see Hurts picking up yards on the ground. I see him making big pass plays. He doesn't turn the football over. The Eagles don't hurt themselves. And that's where the 49ers ran into a problem last week when things were falling apart. The Eagles don't do that. And I think there's, again, big mismatches with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Goddard, and the fact that they can still run the ball with their quarterback and their running backs. I think it's going to be all kinds of problems for the Chiefs. They're going to have their hands full. And can Patrick Mahomes keep it close? Yeah, he could keep it close. But he's going to have an all-time great game to win. Andy Reid's going to have his A coaching game too, and Mahomes is not going to have anything less than an A game to win it. And they're going to have to take some pressure off Mahomes, and they're going to have to find a way to run the ball. Far more important for the Chiefs to be able to run the ball than the Eagles. And someone else other than Travis Kelce is going to have to step up. And on defense, they're going to have to find some way to force turnovers. And the Eagles just don't turn the football over. So what do I see? I see the Eagles not blowing out the Chiefs, but I do see a double-digit victory. 35-24. Again, the great news about this is you're playing on a grass field. You're playing in almost perfect conditions, which is what you want for the Super Bowl. And the Eagles have the big advantage. I mean, when you say, well, what is the biggest advantage or mismatch of the game? It's going to be the Eagles' offense versus the Chiefs' defense. Is they're really going to get tested. I mean, you could say, in fairness, the Eagles' defense did not get tested last week, and they've had a fairly easy road to the Super Bowl. And you think about the Giants, they were playing over their heads. They were a confident, younger team. But the Eagles had a huge advantage from a talent standpoint. And going back, I know I picked the Giants because I wasn't sure about Hurts' health. And sometimes we've seen the bye week do bad things to the top seed when you don't have experience in that position. But the Eagles blew out and destroyed the Giants. And then, they played a team without a quarterback. So I thought this was a very easy road. I mean, take the Buccaneers from 20. They had to go through, outside of Washington, they had to go through 3 all-time great quarterbacks. The Bucs had to go through Breeze. I know he was at the end of his career, but still not easy winning in New Orleans. They had to go to Green Bay against Rodgers, and then they've had to beat Mahomes. This, until now, has been easy, and they haven't been tested. So we'll see how much of a factor that is. The Chiefs play so much better at home. I think getting them in that neutral site, their secondary is going to be overwhelmed. They're going to have to tackle well because the Eagles' offense, they have it all, though. They do. They have Hurts, who can throw deep. He can make the big play with his arm. He can do the little things and pick up first downs by running. He can buy time. They can run the football. They have the deep threat. They have the possession receiver. And then they have a tight end like Goddard. Not to mention that offensive line, that massive, physical offensive line. Best in football. I just don't see Chris Jones being able to make a difference. I don't. As good as he is, it was like Nick Bosa last week, and I don't think Nick Bosa's right. I think he has some kind, he wore down, he had some injuries, but it was just Nick Bosa and a bunch of guys. I mean, there's no one else on that defensive line who's a Pro Bowler. There's no one else on that defensive line who's ever gone to a Pro Bowl at all. And same thing with Chris Jones. I mean, they have some guys there, like Dunlap, but he's at the end of his career. Chris Jones by himself is not going to be enough to cause problems for the Eagles' offense. And I think very highly of Steve Spagnuolo. think what he's done in 2007 with the Patriots, with his defensive effort, and then he made adjustments in the Super Bowl in 19 also. I just don't see it happening. I don't see a scenario where the Chiefs are going to be able to do enough in this matchup. Not this year. Eagles will win the Super Bowl 35-24.